Hello friends, Eli and Louie here. Back for a collection video. Normally I do 10 CDs out of my collection. Today we're going to do 11 just because that's kind of how it worked out. First off, we're listening to Dim Him from Sweden, Swedish black metal. This is their, this is their second full length. Came out in 2005 on Satanic Propaganda Records out of Sweden. A little bit hard to pronounce that, so you can just have a look for yourself there. Really fucking good stuff. I have this in my distro, by the way. Kind of a new discovery for me. Just great. That, kind of early to mid 2000s Swedish black metal sound. These guys really nail it. One of the members was he's not alive anymore, but he was in Onscapt and Life Lover, and obviously a really talented dude. I was a big fan of both of those bands, so I mean, this is really scratching that itch for that good kind of orthodox Swedish black metal. So if you like what you hear, feel free to pick up a copy. Sorry about the shaky camera. That would be Louie's doing. But anyways, we have 11 CDs, and the reason I picked 11 is because I had 11 Deicide albums, so I didn't want to cut off at the last album. Deicide actually have 12 full lengths, but there's one of them that I don't have. And I don't particularly need it, but I'll probably pick it up someday for the fuck of it. But yeah, and they're actually in chronological order, which is kind of rare for me. Got the first debut Deicide album. I have the 98 Roadrunner repress. So this is probably going to be a kind of a short video. I mean, there's not a lot to say. I don't think I need to ramble on about Deicide. If you don't know who Deicide are, they're one of the seminal Florida death metal bands from the old days. Louis, sorry. Usually he's laying down or something when I'm doing a video, but today he's an active motherfucker. That'll work. God damn it. Threw off my flow, man. Yeah, so one of the greatest death metal bands that come out of the U.S. in the Florida scene in the early '90s. They started off as Amon before they changed their name to Deicide, and Amon was good stuff too. I mean, it's basically Deicide, but there were two Amon albums or two Amon demos that were pretty fantastic. Yeah, we have here my personal favorite Deicide album. Their second album, Legion. This came out in '92 on Roadrunner Records. This is actually an original pressing. This is one of the first death metal CDs I ever got. So I've had this for a long ass time, and it still plays. It's pretty, it's very scratched, but for most Deicide fans, it pretty much boils down to what's better between the first two. There's no denying the power of the first album, but for me, it's Legion, and it might have a lot to do with that's when I got into them. That was the first album that I found, so it's always kind of stayed with me. And when I opened my copy of Legion, which I haven't opened this in a long time, I found a CD that I thought I had lost years ago, and I don't have the case anymore, but Deicide When Satan Lives came out on Roadrunner Records. Good live album. If I remember correctly, it's kind of hard to come by these days. I think it's sort of rare, out of print for a long time. I could be wrong. Anyways, moving on to the third full-length album. We're still in that era, that era of Deicide that I really like. For me personally, some people kind of draw the line at Once Upon the Cross, but for me, yes, it is a little different, but this is still when they were, I considered them still at a very high point for this album. God, what year did this come out? 96? I want to say 96 or something, but yeah, it came out on Roadrunner Records. Still a fantastic album, if you ask me. Fourth album, which is still a fantastic album. After the fourth album, they would kind of experience some issues as a band. 97 brought us Serpents of the Light. They were still signed to Roadrunner. Still the original lineup. Still a fantastic album, in my opinion. Now, 90, let's see, Was it 98? I think it might have been 98. Anyways, we would get Incinerate Him. And let's see, I'm going to pull this up on the Metal Archives. No, 2000. It was 3 years. So When Satan Lives, by the way, this came out in 98. Incinerate Him came out in 2000. This would be when the band would start to experience some issues, you could say. Still the original lineup, if I remember correctly. Now, Deicide wanted out of their Roadrunner contract. And legend has it that they basically put out 2 rushed and mediocre albums. Even, Glenn Benton himself claims, if I remember correctly, he was like telling people to not buy these albums. He just wanted to put them out to fulfill his Roadrunner contract. I don't have In Torment in Hell, which would come out in 2001. But anyways, Incinerate Him, despite everything that you hear, I don't think it's that bad of an album. It basically feels like, the skeleton of a Deicide album with the, the original lineup. It feels like an album that Deicide would write and, not put in the time to kind of, to elaborate and finish. And, it basically sounds like a Deicide album that they wrote in a couple of weeks, and that's basically what it sounds like. That said, it's not like they were intentionally putting out a shitty album. So it means well. It's just, the songwriting is just, like I said, it feels rushed, it feels unfinished, and that's basically what you're getting. Let's see, Scars of the Crucifix would come out in 2004. Still the original lineup, and to be honest, this would be the last album featuring, the Hoffman brothers. I still feel like this is a really good album. Probably not as good as the first 4, but I still think it's pretty fucking good. Yeah. I still love this album, to be honest. Some people don't quite feel that way. 2006 would bring us an even better album than that, The Stench of Redemption. Now, a lot of people would consider this the last time Deicide put out a very good album. I was going to say great, but I don't know. That's up to you, what you consider it. But it is a very good album. One of my favorite Deicide albums, actually. This is actually a 2019 re-release. Flimsy digipack, from Earache. By the way, I forgot to mention that. They signed to Earache for this album, and then this album, and for a while longer. So anyways, this album would be kind of known for the first album after the Hoffman brothers left. Enter Jack Owen from Cannibal Corpse and Ralph Santola. Ralph has done a lot of stuff. He's done, he's been a live member for Death, for Iced Earth. He did a stint in Obituary around the same time of this album. I want to say he was in Deicide and Obituary at the same time. They might have overlapped a little bit. But anyways, still a fucking great album. I think this is, some of their best writing is on this, in my opinion. Now, 2008, you'll notice that, they're still putting out an album every 2 years in a lot of cases. We would get Till Death Do Its Parts. So Till Death Do Us Part. This originally actually came with a patch, which is kind of cool. Came with this patch right here. I still have it somewhere. This album was one that when it first came out, I thought the first couple songs were a little different for Deicide, but really awesome. And then I would kind of get bored by most of the rest of it. But the last couple of years, I think it was last year, I actually pulled this album out and I listened to it like once every week for, I listened for about 4 or 5 weeks. And, I kind of changed my opinion on the album. As a whole, it can get a little formulaic and it can get a little boring at times. But if you pay attention, man, there's some great guitar work from Santola and Owen. And I would actually say some of the best guitar work that you'll hear on any Deicide album. It's like I didn't realize how good of a team those two guys were. I mean, fucking phenomenal. There's some great guitar work on this album. Yeah, and they were, I don't quite know how to say it, but they were kind of going for, some of the songwriting's got kind of a different feel, but it can get a little boring at times, nonetheless. Let's see here. 2011, so they would actually have a 3-year gap this time, and they would sign to Century Media Records and put out To Hell With God. Not a bad album. For me it falls a little bit short of, it falls a little bit short of their last, their first couple earache albums. I would say it's on par with Till Death. On par with that, maybe even a little better. It's a decent Deicide album. It is not great, but it's decent. Still got the same lineup. We got Jack Owen and Ralph Santola. Haven't listened to this album in quite a while. I'm gonna have to throw it on because I don't remember it well enough to really talk too much about it. 2013, still doing that every 2-year thing. We got In the Minds of Evil, and this would be the first album to feature Kevin Quirion, who has actually been with the band ever since. So he's been, let's see, he might have even joined, it might have even been like 2011 or 2012. He just didn't play on this album, because he's been with the band quite some time now. I felt like he'd been in the band longer than that, so we're only looking at 7 or 8 years max. But anyways, Ralph Santola left. Kevin Quirion, he was in a band called, I think it was called The Order of Aeneid, with Steve Ashim, actually, drummer of Deicide. Kind of a melodic death metal band, maybe a little bit of black metal influences. But In the Minds of Evil, a lot of people were talking about this album when it came out, and it is pretty good. It's pretty strong. It's the strongest thing they had done since probably, in my opinion, Stench of Redemption. Some people say, I remember when it came out, people were saying it was the best since like Serpents of the Light, but I think Stench of Redemption is better than this. And I even think Scars of the Crucifix gives it a run for its money. But it's still a pretty good album. Last year, 2018, would give us Overtures of Blasphemy. They're still signed to Century Media at this time. Really good artwork, by the way. I mean, it's very cool stuff. And it's a good album. This is definitely a good album. Hype sticker. And this, in my opinion, was better than In the Minds. And this, I would say, is probably their best album since Stench of Redemption. It's good. It's good. It's same line, or not the same lineup. I take it back. Jack Owen was in the band for part of the writing. I think he's got some writing credits on this album. But he got pissed off and he left. And they brought in a guy named Mark English, who, Florida native. I don't know much about him. I know he's in Monstrosity right now. So he was in Monstrosity and Deicide. He's already left Deicide, so he's already gone. They have some other guy in now. But good guitar player, though, Mark English and Kevin Quirion. Good team. Very, very brutal album. I want to say it sounded meaner and a little heavier than they had in a while. Maybe a little bit more motivated than I had in a while, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we think about this album in 5 years or whatever. My guess will be it'll just be another death metal album. I don't think it's ever going to be a great album, but if you're a Deicide fan, this came out and you were probably pretty pleased. I know I was. I've listened to it at least 4 or 5 times, and I'm not done with it. It's been on the shelf, but I'll return to it from time to time. But I do that with a lot of albums. So anyways, that was, I guess, technically 12 albums, so I gotta go. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. We'll talk soon. Cheers.